I discovered 3 terrifying true horror stories that haunt me alone at night. I never should have opened that door. I still remember the chill that swept over me, creeping down my spine like icy fingers. I was just a mundane Friday night, sitting on my worn-out couch, diving into the latest horror documentary. My room was dark, save for the flickering light from the screen. Then I heard Ida faint, scratchy whisper, prickled my skin. I paused, heart pounding. Was it the movie or something more? I glanced around, shadows creeping, growing thicker in the corners of my small living room. The air felt heavy, like I was suffocating under a cold blanket. This time, the whisper came again. It was louder, closer. My breath caught in my throat. I rationalized. It's just the house settling, old pipes making weird sounds. But deep down, I knew. This was different. I stood up, the floor creaking beneath my feet as if warning me to stop. My senses heightened. The chilling scent of dampness filled the air, thick and musty. I felt a strange pull, drawing me toward the hallway. My gut twisted. What waited in the darkness? The flickering lights made shadows dance along the walls, their shapes shifting into figures. I forced myself forward, every nerve screaming to turn back. The hallway felt endless. I could hear my own heartbeat, a frantic drum in a void of silence. The whispers morphed into unintelligible murmurs, urgent, indistinct. My hands trembled, clammy against the cold doorknob. I knew it wasn't just a door. It was a barrier between my ordinary life and whatever lurked beyond. I twisted the knob. It squeaked open, and the darkness spilled out like a living thing. A rancid odor invaded my nostrils, damp and rotten. I squinted into the abyss. The silence was oppressive. Then it shifted, a murmur louder than before, wrapping around me like a snake. Was it my imagination? A dark figure flickered at the edge of my vision. I blinked. Gone. Panic washed over me, choking me. I was about to step back when I heard heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing in the stillness behind me. My blood ran cold. I whipped around, eyes wide. Nothing. Just emptiness. Shadows swallowing the light whole. I turned back to the door, a haunting chill biting at my heels. The dark space yawned before me, begging me to step inside. My breath caught. Do I take the plunge, or do I retreat? But before I could decide, a loud slam echoed through the hallway, rattling every bone in my body. I spun around, heart racing. What was behind me? Couldn't see it, but I felt it. The hair on my neck stood tall. I backed away slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. This nightmare was just beginning. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat echoing like a war drum in the stillness of the hallway. I felt exposed, a vulnerable prey in an unseen trap. I could hear the silence pressing down on me, thick and suffocating, punctuated only by that ominous slam that reverberated in my bones. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to flee, but something held me rooted. It was a sensation that crawled from the base of my spine to my skull, an almost magnetic pull toward the darkness that lurked just beyond the threshold. The air grew colder, wrapping around me like a shroud, and the faintest hint of a sweet floral scent, sickly and faint, wafted from the void. It felt wrong, like a beautiful lie. The whispers rose again, a cacophony of disembodied voices weaving in and out of comprehension. Come in, join us. It's safe. The words twisted around my mind, blending with my own fears, taunting me. It was a cruel jest, an invitation to a banquet of horrors I could feel vibrating against the base of my skull. I forced myself to breathe, to think past the rising tide of terror. Was this all in my head? My fingers traced the cold doorframe, feeling the texture of the peeling paint, the weight promising me safety, but instead barricading me from what lay ahead. Curiosity clawed at me. Just one step, just a peek. And yet, the air whispered warnings I could not ignore. A sudden wind gusted through the hallway, making the old frames rattle against the walls, flicking off the meager light that had been my only comfort. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the wall. Darkness swallowed the room, and for a split second, I couldn't even see my own hands. The chaotic symphony of hushed tones grew frantic, a desperate plea to step further into the shadow. Then I saw something in outline, soft and fluid like smoke, arching out from the darkness. It hovered just outside of view, a shape undefined, but there was something undeniable about it. I felt it gaze at me, studying me with a hunger that gnawed at my insides. My breath quickened, a harsh rasp against the quiet. I was no longer alone. I was being watched. The chill intensified, and with it came a throb of anxiety. I had never believed in spirits or ghosts, yet everything I thought I understood crumbled in an instant. What I had taken for shadows now revealed themselves as hooked arms, almost beckoning. I hurriedly turned to escape, but the moment my foot planted on the first step, the house groaned a low, rumbling warning that echoed my frantic pulse. A voice crept into my thoughts, oily and welcoming. "You're not done yet." Before I could process those words, the lights flickered back on, blinding me for a brief moment. My heart sank when I saw her, a woman standing at the end of the hallway. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent. Her hair a dark silhouette that tousled wildly as if caught in an invisible storm. Her stare bore through me, eyes like hollow voids set into her porcelain face, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was waiting for me to make my next move. I felt the oppressive weight of her presence, a predator's patience, hunger lurking just beneath the surface of her serene facade. I desperately looked for an escape, but the shadows rippled around her as if anticipating my fear. With my breath stuck in my throat, I turned to lunge toward the living room, desperate to leave this nightmare. But then, a hand brushed against my ankle, cold and clammy. I gasped, looking down to see a small child, their wide eyes reflecting the same dark void I had seen in the woman. "Don't leave," the child whispered, chilling me to my core. Suddenly, I understood. Whatever haunted this house was not merely trapped behind the door. It was alive and intertwined with every corner of my world. My breath came in shallow gasps, and just as I turned to flee, the whispers crescendoed, and the walls around me trembled. Without warning, the door slammed shut, sealing me with the shadows. The last flicker of my sanity wavered, and then I heard the unmistakable sound of laughter, ringing through the darkness behind me, echoing forever in the void. The laughter skittered across the walls like an infestation, filling every crack and crevice with a grotesque cheer. I stood frozen, eyes wide, a prisoner of a place that had come alive with malice. The woman and the child loomed closer, woven into the very fabric of the shadows, grinning in a way that suggested that they knew too much. "Join us," the child said, the voice lilting and sing-song, as if reciting a nursery rhyme. The edges of my vision darkened, threads of anxiety dancing around me like living vines, choking away any chance of rational thought. My instincts flared, igniting a fight-or-flight response I could barely harness. I had to move, to escape, but every time I shifted, the laughter would swell a chorus of mocking delight layered with malice. My heart raced as I fought against the urge to scream, knowing that sound would only summon more shadows. As I turned, I felt something brush against my skin, a whisper of warmth in the frigid air. I spun around, breath hitching in my throat as I came face to face with the woman. She now stood mere inches away, her expression shifting from serene to menacing in an instant. There was an urgency in her eyes, a lust that twisted something deep within me. "Stay with us forever," she breathed, her hot breath laced with the scent of decay and desperate roses. I recoiled from her presence, a primal fear coursing through my veins, but the walls closed in, pushing me back toward the creeping shadows. The child's laughter echoed again, tidying the layers of terror into a tapestry of dread that enveloped me. I stumbled. The door now a blurred obstacle behind me. I had no memory of it slamming shut. And yet here it was barred by some unseen force, chains of darkness binding it tight. Panic surged within, clawing at my throat as I backed toward an unseen corner. The woman's figure blurring into the background of creeping shadows. "Join us," the voice echoed, now a mere whisper of promises entwined with a haunting chant. I was losing myself, the reality of what I faced sinking into an abyss, where fear swirled like a never-ending storm. The laughter faded then, only to be replaced by a distant, melodic tunia lullaby that beckoned me to surrender. "Please," I gasped. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you are ours," the woman replied. Her voice dropped to a low hum, the walls pulsing with her resonance, as though the very house itself hung on her every word. "And we need you." In an act of sheer desperation, I lunged toward the small, dusty window on my left, its glass fogged and cracked. But a force stumbled me back, a heavy grip around my waist, childlike fingers tightly clutching my shirt, pulling me back into their clutches. "No!" I cried, panic gripping my throat in a vice. Every muscle in my body fought against the intense gravity of despair, pushing me to submit, to stand in silence as they welcomed me into their void. The darkness behind me began to dance, forming abstract shapes that twisted and wreathed a macabre puppet show of futility. I grasped the child's wrist, attempting to pry free from this grip, but the moment I touched their skin, a wave of icy tendrils shot through me, invading my mind with visions, flickers of past lives lost, screams swallowed whole by the shadows. "Help me!" I gasped, knowing the word would fall into the apathy of the house. But a shard of hope ignited in my chest, a memory of a hidden corner, of a boundless energy waiting to be tapped. I needed to find it, to escape this nightmare before it consumed me completely. As I wrenched my arm free, the air shifted, amplifying the spectral laughter around me, a chorus of anguish and joy entwined. With one last desperate glance at the figures now drawn close by invisible threads, I turned toward the only route left, the door, a surrogate sanctuary in uncertain territory. But just as I placed my palm against the unforgiving barrier, the ground beneath me quaked violently. The walls hummed with anger, portals gleaming momentarily before shadows tightly gripped them shut again. An insidious voice filled the air, an echoing promise laced with deep-seated terror. "Dare you turn your back on us? You may escape this room, but you can never escape us." The darkness surged, swirling around my feet, pulling me down into a cascade of creeping panic. I stood frozen in realization that whatever ghastly force loomed beyond the threshold was far worse than the very house I struggled against. And then I felt Ida's cold breath crawling up the back of my neck, sending electric shivers through my spine. Shadows lurked, eagerly waiting just beyond the light, where unseen horrors swirled and thrived. My trembling fingers found purchase on the door handle, heart racing. And as I turned it, the laughter intensified, the melody of my own demise ringing louder, wrapping itself around me like the final note in a dark symphony. The door groaned, an unsettling sound that echoed through the darkened hallway, slicing through the laughter like a blade. I pressed my weight against the handle, heart hammering wildly, to find that the door wouldn't budge, as if it were a sentient being laughing at my plight. The shadows surged, wrapping tighter around my ankles, a sentient tug-of-war between hope and despair. "Come, come," the persistent whispers of the woman curled around me like smoke. Straining for resolve, I yanked the door again, as if sheer will could pry it open and grant me freedom. Instead, it responded with a tortured wail, and the air thickened with a rancid stench of decay, forcing bile to rise in my throat. I stumbled back, colliding with the child, who stood grinning, eyes wide and glistening, a sickly gleam weaving through the depths of their stare. The pressure from the shadows tightened, suffocating as my sanctuary seemed to vanish. My breath quickened, slipping past my lips in desperate gasps that echoed in the growing darkness. What do you want?" I stammered, forcing a semblance of defiance through my fear. The child's grin melted into a knowing smile that didn't reach their eyes. Instead, those eyes widened, revealing a vacant abyss. "We want you to play forever," the child declared, their voice shifting unnaturally, the lilt morphing into a spine-chilling harmony that echoed all around me. harmonizing with the ill-fated echoes of the house. The walls vibrated in response, pulsating in a grotesque rhythmic heartbeat, a morbid anthem entwined with laughter and despair. The room warped, shifting with sinister delight. Objects began to tremble off their surfaces. A dusty clock swung chaotically on its chain. A chair fell over, whispering of past sorrows. All at once, my surroundings felt unfamiliar and twisted, as if the very nature of reality was unraveling at the seams. Jerking my gaze away from the creeping chaos, I staggered back toward the nearest wall, desperation fueling my movements. An odd rhythm behind me began to thud, and the shadows seemed to pulse with anticipation. I caught a glimpse of the hallway behind me, where the darkness thickened, revealing a swirling vortex of gray mist that beckoned with dreadful allure. Suddenly, a faint illumination flickered at the convergence of the shadows and the dull, smoky light that danced invitingly. It called to me, igniting a flicker of hope in my chest. Without thinking, I darted toward it, feet pounding against the creaking floorboards as the laughter crescendoed behind me. An orchestra of taunting voices that clamored for my attention. "Your light won't save you," chorus after chorus sang, their words tumbling forth like cascading shadows, entwining around my vision as I neared the glow. I could feel their cold presence breathing down my neck, fingers brushing my back with each frantic step as I neared the shimmering light. It expanded, revealing what lay concealed in a cracked mirror that loomed ahead, fragmented images flaring into life, reflections of myself twisted in grotesque mockery of joy. Voices screamed from the depths of the glass, a cacophony of torment as I saw not only my own terrified visage, but also fleeting glimpses of others lost in anguish. Each face screamed out in muted silence, mouths contorted in cries for help that would never reach the living. I reached out, fingers trembling, to touch the surface, yearning for clarity amidst the chaos. But the mirror pulsed against my palm, a solid barrier that throbbed with dark energy, a prison as much as a portal. Then, in that moment of suspended breath, a sharp crack erupted through the air. The reflection of the woman materialized behind my own image, a horrifying apparition wearing a smile that turned sinister, eyes glowing with dark hunger as she lunged forward. "Join us!" she screamed, and the shadows writhed, centering on where I stood, a vortex of misery blossoming like a grotesque flower bathed in darkness. The mirror splintered, shards flying in every direction, slicing through my vision like knives as the room erupted in laughter and chaos. I staggered back, losing my footing as the shards fell around me, each echoing shriek tearing through me like razor wire, binding me to my fate. And then everything went dark. Suddenly, the laughter faded, replaced by an echoing silence that enveloped me in a suffocating embrace. I shivered, panic clawing back to life in the pit of my stomach. A pulse of malevolence filled the air, making my skin crawl, and I felt myself suspended between reality and the grasp of the void. Where are you?" I pleaded, terror mounting as an undeniable truth settled upon my shoulders like a heavy fog. "No more games," a voice whispered, threading its way through the silence, dark, raspy, a promise grounded in unending despair. For an instant, I was blinded by a bright flash, illuminating the room briefly, and before I could blink, the faces I'd seen in the mirror flickered back, now pressed against the shards of glass, hands reaching outward with expressions of horror as they were pulled back into the depth of the reflective world behind them. I fell back, nothing but fragments of the room remaining, reality splintering into more haunting, shattered pieces. As I gasped for breath, the shadows curled around me once more, and I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, a sensation of being held captive by unseen forces. And then, from beneath the overwhelming dark, a chorus started, once aga ina sweet, haunting lullaby slowly crescendoing, whispering promises of sweet surrender. "Join us, join us." I shut my eyes tightly, bracing myself against the inevitable. And just as the warmth began to sweep through my veins, a new sound pierced the foga, heavy knock, echoing through the silence, firm and unyielding. The door behind me creaked open slowly, revealing a flicker of moonlight seeping through an impossible glimmer of safety. But just before I could step toward the light, a cold hand seized my wrist, a grip that felt both childlike and ancient, dragging me back not to shadows, but to something far worse, and the real horror began. The grip around my wrist tightened, the chill seeping into my flesh like ice water. Immediately, I was yanked backward, my feet slipping on the floorboards slick with dread. The specter before me was no longer just a child. It had morphed into a leering apparition, writhing with shadows that painted its form in grotesque hues. It held me with an unnatural strength, eyes like voids absorbing all light around them. "Don't go!" it screeched, its voice now a cacophony of the innocence lost. A blend of childish giggles twisted into a mournful wail that echoed within the spectral silence that engulfed the room. I felt the weight of despair crashing down upon me, each sound linking me to the many souls I couldn't save. Panic surged through me, and I kicked against the wooden floor, desperately trying to pry myself away from its grasp. Yet, as I struggled, I could feel the shadows respond, pulsing as if echoing the rhythm of my fear, their grip around me tightening like a noose. I could feel their collective hunger, the many voices whispering in unison like a fading lullaby. "Stay and play with him." Another voice joined, this one deeper and more sinister, crawling into my thoughts like dark tendrils. "He only wants a friend. Forever." The shadows swirled, and their cold fingers pressed against my throat, choking off any plea or shout I could muster. My vision began to blur as the echoes of past victims collided with cruel laughter, magnifying the weight of despair that pressed against me like an ancient curse. A fabric of torment wove around me. I was bound by the very essence of sorrow that I end that suffocating darkness. My thoughts drifted to the mirror, the shards now glistening across the floor like jagged glass teeth, remnants of my fleeting attempt to seize escape. The shining surface had not just held reflections. It was a grim reminder of the boundaries between worlds, and I could feel an insidious pull toward it, a serene promise buried deep within dread. "Join us," the voices echoed once more, a symphonic plea that made my heart race. A flash of desperation ignited within me. They wanted me, craved my essence. Sight was intoxicating. But beneath the shadows, a flicker of my will ignited a spark of defiance against the malevolence. Drawing on whatever strength remained, I turned my body to face the swirling abyss. "No!" I shouted, willing my voice to cut through the darkness, to sever the connection between me and the child of shadows. The grip on my wrist faltered, just for a moment, yet it was enough. I ripped myself free, stumbling across the room, my heart racing as icy fingers slashed at my heels. With terror driving me, I raced past the shattered remnants of the mirror, feeling the whispers grow frantic, urging me to return, to surrender. As I neared the door, the moonlight offered the most potent sanctuary, a threshold to freedom. My heart thundered louder than the oppressive laughter that echoed behind me. My madness was slipping away like grains of sand. Just then, the door slammed shut, the darkness within roiling like a living beast. In that moment, I could feel their presence coiling around me, a swarm of anguish and despair, each shadow weaving their torment deep into my bones. An icy laugh reverberated, scratching against my sanity as the light from the window flickered ominously, dancing with malevolence. The voices sang a desperate harmony. "It's too late to leave in a mad rush." I hurled myself against the door, a raw scream tearing from my throat, a plea for release that hung in the air like a ghost. The wood shuddered beneath my weight, groaning in protest, but gave no sign of yielding. "Come play," they sung, sweet and taunting. My heart raced. Each beat resonated with fear. The room brimmed with shadows that pulsated around me like a ravenous tide. And then, through the chaos, a flicker of clarity broke, a realization surging through me amid the dread. I spotted something beneath the thick, oppressive air. Entrapped in the corner was a small, dusty toy chest, almost drowned by sprawling shadows. A silver thread of curiosity, entwined with my fear, pulling me closer. As I knelt, my fingers hesitated over the latch. Something deep within warned that whatever lay inside could either shatter the horror consuming me or plunge me deeper into torment. The shadows gathered, the air thickening with malice, and the voices rose, like a chorus of despair echoing my mounting dread. "Open it, open it! A game we can play forever." the child echoed, mocking me from the periphery of my psyche. And just as I gathered the courage to thrust the lid open, dark winds howled through the room, and a terrible foreboding washed over me, blurring the boundary between fear and curiosity, the last vestiges of my sanity clashing against the pull of the unknown. With a trembling hand, I lifted the lid, and the room erupted into chaos. Nothing prepared me for what rose from that abyss. The moment I flung open the lid, a howl pierced the silency, an unnatural sound that seemed to rip through the very fabric of reality. The toy chest erupted with a smothering cloud of dust, dark and thick, swirling like smoke from an ancient fire. As I shielded my eyes from the dust storm, a chorus of whispers surrounded me, more pronounced now, coiling like serpents around my mind, urging me to look deeper. Slowly, I dared to peer inside. The interior of the chest felt alive, pulsating with a dark energy. Amongst the scattered remnants of broken toys, a glimmer caught my eye. Nestled within the ruins of forgotten playthings was a small porcelain doll, its once pink cheeks now marred with dirt and sadness. Its cracked smile bore no semblance of innocence. Rather, it seemed to gloat, eyes glistening with an awareness that sent chills racing down my spine. This doll was not just a mere childhood relic. It resonated with the shadows, sending tendrils of energy toward me, urging me to take it. Instead of joy, a cold dread seeped into my soul, mingling with the insidious whispers that beckoned me. Bring her to life, they sang, a twisted lullaby laced with despair. The edges of my vision darkened. As if the room's light was being consumed by an unseen force, I recoiled, an instinctual terror flooding my senses. But even as I backed away, the whispers grew louder, demanding my attention. One voice stood out, a sibilant, maternal tone that soothed yet grated against my sanity. Play with her. She's lonely, desperate and trembling. I pushed the chest away, only to feel the shadows react, coiling eagerly around the wood, as if mourning the loss of its treasure. The child entity lingered at the edge of my vision, still swirling within darkness. Its face twisted not in anger but in desperate longing. My breath caught in my throat, the weight of countless hidden memories pressed against me. A reminder that I was never truly alone. Suddenly, the walls began to close in, the room warping like a nightmare. Distorted laughter echoed, reverberating cruelly in tandem with the whispers that surged higher. A cacophony of childlike glee twisted with malice. With each heartbeat, the shadows flickered closer, their whispers forming a tapestry of dread, weaving my deepest fears into a tangible veil of darkness. Panic surged once more through my veins as I stumbled backward away from the chest, nearly losing my balance. The overwhelming sensation of being watched intensified. I could feel their eyes upon each shadow, each voice, a gaze that pierced through the fabric of reality itself. And then I heard it. A soft, insidious giggle echoing from the other side of the room. My pulse quickened, adrenaline flooding my system. The shadows shifted, parting for a moment to reveal a faint outlinea figure standing in the periphery, half hidden by the darkness. "She'll be so happy," the voice cooed, chillingly sweet and sing-song. The figure stepped forward, revealing a gaunt silhouette cloaked in distorted mirrors, an ethereal reflection of what once was. It was not the child I'd seen before. This one was taller, its form stretched unnaturally, flickering as if caught between worlds. Its face, though obscured, was marked with the same twisted smile as the doll. A malevolent joy glinting from deep within. "Will you play?" it asked, a promise laced with malice echoing through the room, causing the shadows to snap and writhe around its form. My instincts screamed for escape. I stumbled toward the door one last time, every part of me clutching to the hope of freedom, but the weights of regret and despair tethered my spirit. The ghostly hand that gripped my wrist was not of one but many, a legion of lost souls forever entwined in the shadow's embrace. "Don't go," the specter wailed, its voice a symphony of anguish mingling with the laughter that filled the room. With the eyes of the countless trapped souls boring into me, I felt myself drawn back, a magnetic pull towards an endless oblivion made manifest by my fear. Shadows flickered like flames, the air thickening as the door buckled under tremendous force, rattling against its frame. And just as I felt the weight of eternity pressing down upon me, the room cracked like glass. In an eruption of sound, the porcelain doll shot towards me, propelled by an unseen force, its laughter merging with the chaos as shadows converged, ushering forth a scream of fury and desperation that echoed into the chaos. Within that moment of blinding horror, I realized there was no escape. The doors to the other realm were swinging wide open, and something even darker was about to spill forth. And before I could scream, a hand, soulless and skeletal, reached from the churning shadows, grasping at me, and I felt my body start to unravel into the dark. Playtime is eternal. It hissed, just as reality flickered and twisted around me like a malignant serpent, dragging me into an abyss of unspeakable terror. As I plunged into the dark, an icy wave crashed over me, the weight of the shadows pressing down like a leaden shroud. Fear coiled tightly around my heart, squeezing until I thought it might burst. The silent scream that clawed at my throat was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. My thoughts scattered like autumn leaves caught in a storm, that I found myself tumbling through a void, the surreal sensation of falling never ending. Whispers echoed all around me, deeper this time, enveloping me in a chilling embrace. The words twisted like serpents, entwining around my mind, burrowing into my thoughts and planting seeds of dread. You belong to us now, they hissed, each word dripping with malice. Suddenly, the dark released its grip and I landed on something hard and unyielding. I blinked my eyes open to a blinding light only to find that it was not light at all, but something far worse. Before me stretched an endless corridor, its walls lined with cracked porcelain dolls, each bearing twisted grins and eyes that seemed far too aware. They stared at me with an unsettling awareness, some even whispering incoherently, their voices merging into a haunting spectral chant. Find her. Set her free. I stumbled to my feet, disoriented but driven by a primal instinct to escape. The corridor, stretching into nothingness, twisted and turned like a labyrinth, and with each hesitant step, I could feel the cool breath of unseen watchers trailing just behind me. Shadows danced along the edges, elongating and contracting, their movements erratic, creating the illusion of life and sentience in the inky black void. Why are you afraid? Sang a harmonious voice from nowhere and everywhere at once, sweet like molasses yet underlined with sinister intent. I spun around, heart racing. Standing at the far end of the corridor, I could just make out the reflection of a child, pale and ethereal, her hair a tangle of darkness like ink poured over her head. She beckoned gently, her tiny hand pulling me forward while a second hidden shadow loomed behind her, its intentions sharp and deadly, play with her forever. The voice sang again, growing louder and more insistent, reverberating through the corridor until the very walls seemed to tremble with anticipation. A chill gripped my spine. The more I stared at the girl, the more I noticed the shadows wrapping around her frame, twisting like serpents bound to their master. There was something intensely wrong, something marred beneath her innocent visage. Despite the fatal allure of her outstretched hand, I knew I had to resist, or I would be dragged further into this nightmare. Come closer, she enticed, her voice dripping with honeyed sweetness. I felt the air thicken, pressing at my chest, urging me forward even when every instinct screamed to flee. In my mind's eye, I could see the remnants of the doll I had tried to escape, the one from the chest, the one that seemed to hold all these horrors together in one twisted stream, and my body betrayed me, taking a shaky step toward her. Don't be frightened. Your friends are here. The shadows rippled, smirking, a grotesque smile spreading across their formless faces. My heart pounded in response, a war drum of panic and horror crashing in my ears. Before I could react, the floor beneath me reverberated with a deep thrum, and the corridor twisted violently. The walls cracked open like a monstrous maw, revealing a yawning abyss swirling with darkness. From within, piercing wails erupted, echoes of haunted laughter merged with agonized screams, an unholy cacophony thrusting me towards the brink. Help us! Help us! The dolls cried in unison, their voices blending into a nightmarish choir of longing and despair. The air grew thicker as I was pulled closer to the gaping void, the sweet child's voice fading under the savage din. I felt a force tugging at me, drawing me into the darkness, and as I struggled against the pull, something reached out, a smoke-like tendril curling around my wrist, cold and vicious. Panic surged in my chest. A figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of my vision, its shadowy form shifting and swirling like a living cloud of despair, its face indistinct but marked by a wide, cruel smile. "Join us," it rasped, lips pulling back to reveal rows of jagged teeth. A multitude of souls swirling in its depths, crying for release they would never find. Playtime awaits, forever and ever. With a surge of adrenaline, I tore myself free from the thrall of the shadows, the corridor closing around me like a vice. Just as I braced to sprint back the way I came, the floor beneath me crumbled, and I was thrust backward, colliding with an unseen force. Dread pooled in my stomach as I gazed back at the girl, her face twisting into a mask of fury and desperation. Shadows curling around her like a dark storm. "Stay with us," she screamed, her voice cracking the fabric of reality itself as the shadows erupted forward, swallowing the corridor whole. And my final moment of resistance, I caught sight of the porcelain doll from before, suddenly alive, its eyes gleaming with malicious glee. It pointed toward me with a bony, stained finger, and just as the maw of darkness threatened to engulf me entirely, I screamed a soundless cry, engulfed by the abyss. And then, as the darkness closed in, echoing with the angry laughter of the shadows, the last thing I heard was a whisper, splintering my very essence. "Welcome to the playroom of eternal night." I awoke, gasping, my heart hammering wildly in my chest as I found myself lying on a cold, tiled floor. It took me a moment to gather my senses, to reconcile the chilling memories of the corridor, and the whispering shadows that had threatened to drag me into their eternal nightmare. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft rustle of something nearby. I opened my eyes to a room drenched in darkness, the faintest sliver of a dirty window letting in the murkiness of twilight. Shadows crawled against the far wall, long and twisted, warping into grotesque shapes that seemed to shiver in anticipation. I pushed myself up, my hands clammy against the frigid tiles, and surveyed my surroundings. The small room was littered with remnants of a once domestic life. A cracked mirror reflected a distorted version of myself, tangled hair framing a face I scarcely recognized. But it was hardly the disarray that unsettled me. It was the overwhelming sense of being watched. "Find her. Set her free." The echo of the sinister chant slithered through my mind like smoke, igniting a flicker of something deep in my memory. I swallowed hard, knowing I had to escape this place before the darkness once again claimed me. I pushed to my feet, only to smell decay and something else, something sweet but wrong infusing the stale air. That I felt an invisible tugging at my heart, like a thread woven into the very fabric of the room, pulling me toward an old, battered door at the far end. Its surface was marred with deep scratches, as though something had desperately clawed at it from the other side. I moved forward hesitantly, each creaking floorboard beneath me complaining like an elderly witness to unseen horrors. As I reached for the doorknob, a soft, tinkling sound floated from behind it, reminiscent of childlike laughter, mingled with sharp cries that resonated with pain and longing. "Play with us," the voices sang, weaving through the air like spectral ribbons, bright yet overshadowed by an inconceivable dread. I recoiled from the door, fighting the urge to flee, but at that moment, it swung open without warning, revealing a cavernous room illuminated only by flickering candles that lined the walls. Hands grasping from the shadows, their fingers trailing towards me as though inviting me into their embrace. The flickering light sent shapes writhing across the walls, and for a moment, I could see them. Children, their faces twisted by confusion and anguish, drifting aimlessly, some peering into the dark corners, others laughing at the freeze frame of a game without a victor. I was frozen by a haunting realization, a ghostly story stitched together by the laughter and sorrow of lost souls. I recognized them. I had seen their likeness in the dolls that once lined the corridor. "And oh," I whispered, panic flaring through me. The sweetness of the laughter turned rancid, filling my mouth with bile. I had stumbled into a nightmare playroom for the suffering, a place where innocence was stripped bare and woven into darkness. "Join us," a girl's voice piped up amidst the throng, and I turned to find the pale figure from my visions, her once innocent smile now twisted, a shadow draping over her like a cloak. You can be one of us. Forever. Forever, echoed the others. A chorus that reverberated through the room like a sinister melody. I turned to run, every nerve in my body screaming at me to escape. But the door had vanished, replaced by an impenetrable wall of shadows. The candles flickered rapidly, casting frantic light that warped the children's features as they began to close in on me, their collective laughter morphing into something deeply unsettling. "This is your home now," they cried, with hands outstretched, tearing through the cobwebbed air to snatch at my clothes, my limbs, pulling me towards them with insatiable hunger. "No," I cried out, struggling against their grip, my body thrashing helplessly. But their grip was stronger than I could have imagined, anchoring me in place as memories flooded back, visions of their curses, of their cries for freedom twisted into a desperate plea for companionship. Just as I felt their cold fingers brushing against my skin, I noticed a dull glimmer in the corner of the room, a rusty key hanging on a nearby hook, the only semblance of hope within this chaos. My heart leaped. It was the way out. I made one last effort to break free from the shadows that encased me, pushing against the thrumming mass of despair. I felt a momentary rush of freedom as I broke their hold, stumbling towards the key, my breath burning in my chest. I could just grasp it when the room erupted in a howling cacophony, the shadows writhing and swirling before enveloping me once more. I shrieked, fisting the key tightly in my palm even as the dark tendrils lashed around me, pulling me back into the suffocating realm of despair. "Join us," they screamed, their voices climbing to a fever pitch, intertwining with the sweet, taunting lilt of the girls' laughter as the shadows poured into me. A final act of desolation, and with one last desperate thought, I felt a tugging sensation at my heart, a violent wrenching that pulled me backwards, the veil of darkness closing in, but something shattered within my chest. The key, glimmering with unnatural light, seemed to pulse, vibrating with a force of its own. Just as it felt like every shred of my being would be consumed, I squeezed my eyes shut and heard one last, dreadful whisper slither across my thoughts. "Welcome, new player." I felt my consciousness tumble through the darkness, weightless and fleeting, as the whisper clung to my mind like a death knell. My heartbeat thundered, a ceaseless rhythm battling against the encroaching void, until the world around me shifted, and suddenly I was sprawled across a familiar cold surface. I was back on the tiled floor, gasping for breath. Every nerve in my body screamed with confusion, my mind racing to make sense of the sudden, jarring return. The flickering candles had vanished, the children lost to the night, but the oppressive weight of dread had not lifted. It pressed down on me, still, stifling and suffocating. The room was unchanged, its atmosphere curdled by lingering shadows that slithered across the walls in grotesque contortions. The air still reeked of decay mixed with that sickly sweetness, the aura of despair hushed but palpably present. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Clutching the key in my palm, I forced myself to my feet, feeling the coolness of the metal pressing against my skin, a reminder that I still had some power, however fleeting it felt. I scanned the room, desperate for an exit. I was certain the door was just a flicker away, but the memories of those children lingered, each face etched into my subconscious like a stone tablet, each cry a haunt that threatened to swallow me whole. "Find her. Set her free." The words echoed once more, sounding like a fractured lullaby snaking through the dark corners of my mind. My fists clenched around the key. Who was her? And why did the chant weave through me like an unending nightmare? I moved toward the only window, a mere square shrouded in grime. Perhaps escaping through there would give me a chance to breathe again. Yet as I approached, the shadows danced closer, forming a dense cloud of inky blackness that seemed to bulge at the window, blocking out any hope of light. I pressed against the glass, attempting to shove it aside, but a low growl reverberated through the air, vibrating against my chest. "Leave," a voice hissed, guttural and twisted, echoing through the tight space. I recoiled, stifling a scream that bubbled in my throat. In my reflection, I saw not just the room's decay but phantom outlines, a swarm of disembodied faces whispering and gnashing in anguish just beyond the barrier. My own visage twisted in horror. It felt as though they could see me, could read my fear and my guilt. Suddenly, Icy fingers brushed against my shoulder, a jolt of terror electrifying my spine. Before I could react, I spun around, the key slipping from my grasp and clattering to the floor. Shadows swirled around me, laughed like the echoes of children ringing in my ears, coaxing me into a dance with despair. "Stay with us," they murmured. "We're all alone in the dark through the chaos." I spotted a mirror at the opposite side of the room, its surface rippling as if alive, beckoning me closer. In the distorted reflection, I saw not only a fractured image of myself but something else, an insatiable void reaching out, a gaping maw of darkness that threatened to devour the very essence of my soul. I bolted towards the mirror, fueled by instinct and desperation. If there was no physical escape, perhaps there lay a way to confront this darkness, the key to understanding what haunted me. The souls trapped in limbo. As I reached the mirror, I felt an abrupt chill wrap around me, pulling me closer as if trying to suck me into its depths. The restless hands of the children appeared around the edges of the glass, scratching at the surface, their misshapen mouths mouthing silent cries for help. Clarity pierced through my terror. These were not just ghosts. They were echoes of choices made long ago, victims of their own entrapment, just as I had become. But before I could ponder too deeply, the mirror's surface erupted, shattering like glass. I felt myself stumble forward, the shards cutting through the fabric of reality itself, and with it came the tumult of shadow, all voices crying out in a final, united plea, "Save us!" As the world fell away, I found myself suspended in a void, surrounded by darkness. Then a flash of light struck through, illuminating a figure. My heart lurched. It was Hera, girl, impossibly similar to the pale specter from the room. Only now she stood firm, hair shimmering like moonlight amidst the chaos, eyes piercing into my soul with a mix of hope and despair. "Help me find her," she whispered, reaching out towards me, her arms outstretched, as the shadows closed in from all sides, offering no comfort and no escape. And then, just as her fingers brushed mine, the darkness surged, swallowing her light whole and leaving behind a resonant phrase, echoing off the walls of my mind. "Your choice is coming." In that moment, the space around me exploded into a kaleidoscope of horrific imagery, faces twisted in agony, hands grasping at the void, the children's laughter morphing into haunting screams, and I knew the real horror was just beginning. As the void collapsed back into the suffocating darkness, the world reassembled itself. A wooden floor creaked beneath me as I gasped for breath, disoriented and clammy with sweat. I was back in the room, the heavy air pressing down, testing every notion of reality amassed in the recesses of my mind. Panic surged through my veins, but the echo of her voice lingered, a final tether to clarity in an ever-thickening fog of shadows. "Help me find her." It was like a prayer, a beacon of light flickering desperately against a backdrop of despair. The glimmer of resolve shimmered through the madness, and I searched the room with feverish eyes for any sign of the girl, the one who'd sparked hope in my heart, whose figure slipped seamlessly between the nightmarish realities. She had to be here. Somehow, she was tethered to this suffocating darkness just like the others. I stumbled back toward the door, but it shuddered with a low growl, shadows leaking from the cracks like a malignant stain. "You can't leave," the voices hissed, a monstrous symphony of taunts weaving around me. But determination turned my fear into a flickering flame. "Let me out," I cried, pounding against the door, feeling the wood quake beneath my weight. But nothing yielded. The shadows laughed, their cold touch crawling along my skin as if hands were reaching out to pull me back into their depths. "And no more games," I gasped, turning to face the room, the corners lined with flickering candlelight, their flames intertwining like ghostly fingers grasping desperately at hope. My gaze fell upon the cracked mirror, still shimmering lightly with fragmented echoes of the past. I could see the silhouettes of children, their faces swimming just beneath the surface, urging me with wide eyes that told stories of torment and longing. "Find us," they whispered, their chorus a haunting serenade that cast a shroud over my sanity. With barely a second thought, I took a step toward the mirror. An electric energy pulsed around it, threads of darkness weaving into the churning air. I knew that whatever lay within held fragments of the truth I needed, an understanding of the souls ensnared here with me. Shivering, I reached out to touch its surface, and in that moment, it reacted violently. the mirror rippled, distorting my reflection, twisting my image into a grotesque mockery. Visibly and audibly, something clawed from the other side, and a sharp scream erupted as if piercing through veils of reality. I sucked in a sharp breath, my heart hammering as the bestial wails of the shadows intensified on the periphery, their relentless reach curling inward, threatening to swallow me whole. This time I murmured, steel building within my resolve. I would find her, the girl from my visions. I would save her and, by extension, myself. With renewed determination, I plunged my fist against the glass, shattering it into a storm of fragmented light and ominous whispers. But as the shards flew outward, swirling chaos enveloped me, ripping apart the very fabric of my being before thrusting me back into the maelstrom. That I landed hard in a room unlike the others, dimly lit yet alive with a shimmering glow that pulsated along the walls. The space resembled a twisted playroom, a sickly sweet nursery where laughter lingered, echoed faintly as it morphed into agonizing wails. It was suffocating, yet as I glanced around, I caught sight of her, the pale girl, fair and translucent, standing amongst a circle of children who watched in rapt anticipation. "Help!" she gasped, her eyes filled with desperation and gleaming with unbearable pressure. "Please help me find her." Please, those anguished words ignited something deep within. The horrific realization washed over me, flooding my senses like a black tide. It was not just about her resurrection. It was about their entrapment, a curse that bound the souls of the innocent, clustered in a web of despair. I had stumbled upon their playroom, yes, but it served an insatiable hunger that sought not just the living but also the remnants of purity lost. But as I approached, the children's eyes darted to one another, exchanging whispers that twisted the air like brittle whispering leaves, revealing something horrifying about their intentions. "Join us," they sang in unison, a cacophony that resonated in the hollow cavern of my heart. Voices drenched in bone-chilling mirth entwined with something much darker, less an invitation, and more a condemnation. "Run," I gasped, turning to flee, but their laughter erupted into a melody that held me in thrall, compelling me to stay. I fought against the walls closing in, a prison constructed of their Desirisa suffocating embrace of shadows and despair. I felt tendrils wrap around my ankles, pulling me back toward the circle that bulged with monstrous delight, hungry for my essence, for me to join their eternal play. But through the rising dread, a luminescent glow shone from the corner of the room, a dull light fighting against the weight of their darkness. "Get to the light," I shouted, my voice strained, desperate. The girl me anchor stood firm, rooted, and yet trembling at the rim of shadows. "Don't be afraid." She reached out toward me, her fingers stretching across a chasm of twisted laughter and shrieks. In that heart-stopping moment, everything crystallized. The shadows shrieked, spinning, swirling as they coiled around us like a hunting snake, eager to snare its prey. I moved toward her with whatever strength remained, my outstretched hand meeting hers. "We will break this," I shouted, breathless, gripping onto the hope she represented. But as our fingers barely brushed, a terrible cracking filled the room, a splintering echo that reverberated through the darkness. The circle of children twisted, their eyes shimmering with madness. "You think you can escape?" Their laughter drowned out my growing despair, and I felt us pulled height-wise toward the glowing light, an unrelenting force compelling the shadows to tear at reality, eager to ensnare our souls forever. Just as darkness enveloped me again, a whisper coursed through like silver threads, igniting my thoughts, a bang of clarity ringing louder than the chaos surrounding us. "It's all a game," it reminded me, and suddenly the words danced within my mind, illuminating the truth hidden in the shadows. This entire night, every Aurora play constructed to feed on the feeble hopes of potential saviors. The door would not just shatter the veil of despair. It demanded more than my mere existence. I sought to maintain the game, a plague of eternal night, and then, she was gone, slipping from my grasp as the shadows seized her, their icy tendrils snaring the glimmer of light she represented until nothing remained, no escape, only elongated darkness. I screamed, and for the first time, the echoes fell silent. With a heart gripped by a chilling terror, I thrust into the depths of the room. "I won't let you win." And I heard her voice again, a delicate note woven with despair. Find her. Set her free. With that, I hurled myself into the vortex of chaos. The laughter ripped at me as darkness expanded around me. I focused not on the swirling shadows, nor on the children reaching out with joyous grins. Instead, I gritted my teeth and forced every ounce of desperation into one resolve. Let me remember you, I commanded, before clenching my heart in a desperate breath. I would become a light in their darkness. The laughter trailed off, replaced by a hushed blend of dread and awe. The shadows wailed instead of seethed, a roiling wave of despair taking on a new shape, shifting, swaying as a singular darkness wrapped around me. Their sinister cries began to deflate into echoes, swelled by something poignant, something not quite lost, and as darkness consumed me entirely, I realized that this suffering was their reality, entwined with my own, but together we could forge a new path, one towards the illumination of their eternal night, toward freedom they longed for. As the abyss twisted my essence, I whispered one final truth, a promise against the suffocating pull of shadows. We will break this curse, together, before the world around me shattered. But as I drifted into their unending night, the last laughter echoed through softly, chilling my core as I faded away. You've always belonged to us.